This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.
The police force immediately become a scapegoat. So that's why more than 800 of police force were actually executed. So I think this is a historical lesson, but they should know one day if the central government change their policies in Hong Kong, they will be discarded right away. They will become the immediate scapegoats.
Welcome to America Daily. I'm Jessica Beatty. What's happening in Hong Kong right now is a window into how the Chinese Communist Party rules its people. We can learn a lot about what happens when governments expand and people's rights shrink. Over the weekend, Hong Kong police fired water cannons at a mosque for no reason, a prominent pro-democracy activist was brutally beaten, and a Hong Kong police chief died under mysterious circumstances. Today we welcome back China expert Sean Lin. He has some very interesting things to share that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Jess, thank you for inviting me.
So over the weekend, Hong Kong police fired water cannons on one of the oldest mosques in Hong Kong. Why was this significant?
Okay, so one of the major incidents that happened in Hong Kong over the weekend was the Hong Kong police actually fired a water cannon against one of the oldest mosques in Hong Kong. And the mosque was in Tsim Sha Tsui area. This is the area that's facing the Victoria Harbour in Hong Kong. And it's one of the most popular tourist sites in Hong Kong. It has many high-end shops and restaurants that caters to the tourists. So this Tsim Sha Tsui area is very popular, and they have one of the oldest mosques. And this mosque can hold about 2,000 people. So it's a large gathering place. And so last weekend, very surprisingly, the Hong Kong police actually fired a water cannon, with these colored waters and directly hitting the buildings and also causing injuries for some of the players in there, and including the leaders. So this quickly triggered the public outcry, and many of the Muslim leaders condemned the Hong Kong police force for doing these actions, because when they fired the water cannons, there were no protests around there. There was no confrontation between the police force and the protesters. So it was just like a random action happened, and it caused injuries, and also, the building was painted in blue. So very quickly, the Hong Kong police apologized for their actions. And on the morning of October 21st, Hong Kong Executive Carrie Lam also went to the mosque and apologized in person. So this was a very surprising event because in the past, in the last several months, we always see the police force was so harsh against the protesters, and they rarely apologize for the police brutality actions. So it's very surprising they quickly apologized. So I think one of the main reasons they said that the police force actually fired the water cannon probably are not the local, genuine Hong Kong police. Because nowadays the Hong Kong police force is already mixed a large population of the mainland Chinese armed police, local police from Guangdong province. So it's such a mixed population in Hong Kong police now. Basically, they have to follow the mainland central government's order. So in essence, Hong Kong police no longer being controlled by the Hong Kong government. So we know that in mainland China, the police has been brainwashed, has been educated to be against many of the religions. And you see the police were the main force to take down many of the mosques in many of the places throughout China. Because the persecution of the Muslim groups, it not only just happened in Xinjiang, in the Uyghur. In China, there are also a large population of Muslims in the Han ethnic. Many of them, we also call them Hui. So these people lives throughout China, and Southwest China also have a large population of Hui ethnic too. That's why when the mainland Chinese police force already get used to take down the mosque, discriminate against the Muslim population, it's kind of a customary action or a routine practice for them to take actions against a mosque, a prayer places, or the population of Muslims. So I think that's why it can happen. The police just filed the water cannon against the mosque. To them, it's nothing. It's no big deal. They are not actually demolishing the mosque. It's just such a little habitual action for them to take action against the Muslim population. So that's why it happened. And they didn't know the Muslim population was so influential in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, there were more than 180,000 Muslim followers, and they have huge presence, has a long history. So also, Hong Kong is a place with religious freedom. In Hong Kong, there are more than 400,000 Catholics and about 600,000 Christians as well. And you know that Hong Kong, there's no law to ban religious gathering. That's why in the summer, when the police deny the application for rallies by the protesters, they cannot deny the gathering of religious followers to pray for Hong Kong's protesters. So that's why the religious group in Hong Kong is very, very influential. And that is also the main reason that Carrie Lam immediately want to apologize. She doesn't want this to be escalated, become another major force criticizing the Hong Kong government. And so this is a very interesting instance, and they also let the whole world see the police brutality and the aggressive actions from the police force. It become a routine. And also probably the Hong Kong government want to instigate additional conflict in Hong Kong. There are many people from South Asia, so many different countries from South Asia also have their immigrants in Hong Kong. So there were rumors spreading that the South Asian Hong Kong residents are against the protesters. So they would try to instigate a conflict between the South Asians versus Hong Kong people. And so if there was actually a conflict between the Muslim population versus the protesters, the Hong Kong governments actually may use it as an excuse to justify their further actions to crack down the protests. So I think this is a very interesting instance, and the world need to closely watch the Hong Kong police actions and what kind of measures, tactics they use to further justify their crackdown against the protesters.
Coming up next, an example of how the Chinese regime sows division among its people. Welcome back. We have China expert Sean Lin with us. So a few days ago, the leader of one of Hong Kong's biggest pro-democracy groups, Jimmy Sham, was brutally beaten for a second time. From the hospital, he said he, quote, remained committed to the ideal of peaceful nonviolence, end quote. Could you comment on this?
One of the main organizers for the Democratic United Front is called, his name is Chen Zhijie, and he was beaten at the second time. But he is clearly aware the strategy from the Hong Kong government or the central government, and so he quickly make a statement saying the whole Hong Kong protest should still maintain its peaceful, rational protest ways, and he did not encourage any of violence because he was beaten. So I think this is very important for Hong Kong protests to see that the leader is actually very clear-minded. They stick to the non-violence protest, and it's very different from what the central government or the Hong Kong government wants, because they always want to have another excuse. They can use additional police force to crack down the protest. So that's why you can see also over the weekend, one of the pro-Chinese media published an article saying that Chen Zhijie was beaten, and so some of the protesters urged to take violent actions, taking knives to fight with the police. And so they spread these rumors on these pro-Chinese government's media, try to give the Hong Kong police additional reason that they can crack down the protest. So I think this is also a clear distinction between what the protest wants and what the government wants. And so actually this is also related to the incident in the mosque. Chinese government and also the Hong Kong government, they want to have the different conflict, different troubles happen in Hong Kong. They would like the Hong Kong protest against Hong Kong government or against the central government turn into a religious conflict, turn into a ethnic group conflict, try to blame some of the South Asian people in Hong Kong. Overall, I think Hong Kong people were very clear that the government is using the same tactic. I think because now is information age now, and with the advance of the social media communication among the young protesters, and also many other people who were able to find additional truths about the Communist Party's crime in the history, and so they become more and more clear-minded to understand what's the tactic the Communist Party tried to use in Hong Kong. That's why they don't fall into the trap easily.
Coming up next, the suspicious death of a Hong Kong police chief. Did he know too much? Welcome back. We have China expert Sean Lin here with us. So there have been reports of young protesters dying under suspicious circumstances, but over the weekend there were also reports of Hong Kong police dying under suspicious circumstances. So what's going on?
Yes. So we saw reports about protesters die unnaturally, very suspicious cases, right? And including very young students die, and no investigation have show these are the true suicide. So many people actually suspected that many of these young protesters maybe died due to police brutality or other ways forcing them to die. So there were reports about that, but very interestingly, over the weekend we also see reports about Hong Kong police die unnaturally. And so one of the chief for the Hong Kong water police actually died in his own car. And it's very suspicious. How could this happen? Because Hong Kong water police were very active engaging, collecting the dead bodies, do the investigation for those so-called suicide protesters, right? So they deeply engage in there. So people being suspecting them, the water police know some of the true situations. What exactly happened to these young protesters? Why they die unnaturally? Many of them didn't show any sign that they want to suicide. How could they die, unnaturally? So that's why, and many people suspected the water police involving in this kind of very dark way to wipe out the protesters. So the death of this water police chief may be due to his knowing too much inside operation of the police forces. And so this reminds me one of the historical lessons. I'd like to share it with you. At the end of the Cultural Revolution in China, that's at the end of 1976, and because the whole society was really upset about the damage of the Cultural Revolution done to the whole society, and so many innocent people died. So many culture were destroyed. And the whole society was really upset on these 10 years of atrocities in China. So even in Beijing alone, so many people were very angry against the police forces because the police force were the one that carried out so many of the killings against innocent people. So at the time, the Communist Party secretly executed more than 800 police just in Beijing alone, in order to quench the public, outcry, to bring the police into justice. In China, because the central government did not allow people to directly criticize the central government, so people's anger have to find a channel out. So it's easy people to be very mad at the police force, even though they are just a tool for the Central Communist Party. So the police force immediately become a scapegoat. So that's why more than 800 of police force were actually executed. So I think this is a historical lesson. Nowadays, I think the Hong Kong police should know about this situation, even for the mainland police force who were ordered to mix with the Hong Kong police now, who's working in Hong Kong now, because they carry out the orders to crack down on these protesters. They can use all kinds of police violence without being brought into justice because the central government support their actions. But they should know one day if the central government change their policies in Hong Kong, they will be discarded right away. They will become the immediate scapegoats. Imagine one day if Carrie Lam stepped down, the Hong Kong police force will face immediate round of cleansing by the central government. Many of them will be pushed to the front to let the public condemn them. They will become the scapegoat. Many of them will be sentenced. Many of them mainland police force in Hong Kong maybe will be brought back to mainland and executed secretly because they know too much details. So I think this is a historical lesson they need to learn, and they need to be aware what they've done in Hong Kong will be held accountable in the near future.
It seems like that's the exact opposite of the rest of the world, at least compared to free societies.
Yes, it's very, very different because the Communist Party have been doing so many political movements in the last few decades. So they have all kinds of experience, right? And all these political movements always kill so many innocent people from different social classes, different social sectors, you can say, whether it's intellectuals or sometimes it's entrepreneurs, sometimes it's students. And so they are so experienced in persecution, and at the same time, they are so experienced in finding excuse and finding scapegoats. So they can always sacrifice a group of people in order for the Communist Party to survive. So Hong Kong police, Hong Kong government people, they need to keep this in mind. One day the central government change their policy, they will be just thrown out like trash. It's a brutal reality if you live under the Communist Party, if you follow the Communist Party order.
Well, Sean, thanks so much for joining us and for sharing your unique perspective.
Thank you.
Coming up next, an inspiring moment from a boy genius.
You're listening to America Daily. I'm Vanessa Rios Gomez, and it's time for an inspiring moment. Have you ever wondered if God exists? Or have you always believed there's a creator? If you're a believer, did that faith start when you were little and someone, perhaps your parents or grandparents, told you the creator exists? You believed them until you were old enough to think your spiritual existence through, and then decided, yes, there's a creator. Maybe your belief has wavered every now and then, and you reserve your strongest faith for hard times. Maybe you're not sure, but have hope the creator exists, but don't have enough evidence. Or possibly you know someone who thinks that anything outside this material world is probably just stardust, rocks, and gas. That this world was all an accident. that there was some great big explosion setting things into motion, and they might think there are other Earths, but somehow us humans are a fluke. I mean, there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who believe there are two kinds of people in the world, and those who don't. But seriously, there are those who believe we are God's creation, and others who believe we descended from apes. However, there might be a third type since cable television was invented, those who think aliens created us. But even amongst believers, there are some who, although they believe, also think believing in a higher power sounds superstitious and illogical. So they shy away from talking in faith, showing their faith, and maybe even walking in their faith. They live ordinary lives on the outside, but we don't know what's inside of them at the spot where love for the Creator and all creation usually resides. Most surprising are those who have given all their faith to discoveries by scientists. Scientists are their clergymen, and science is their religion. It's what they believe in. They might use the infinite monkey theorem as much as Darwin's theory of evolution to support their faith in science, rather than a creator. The infinite monkey theorem is the theory that if a monkey hits a keyboard on a typewriter enough times infinity, it's likely to come up with any great human writing, such as the complete works of Shakespeare. These clever theorists, so smart in their logical, scientific thinking, aren't they? Are they? Albert Einstein, one of 20th century's renowned scientists, once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." By the way, Einstein believed in a creator and a higher power. Yet it seems the more complicated we make something sound, the more credible it sounds. Or we can simply say an expert said this. We trust our experts, don't we? Yet out of the mouth of babes, there's a young genius, not even a teenager yet. He's only 12 years old, and he's on a mission to scientifically prove that God does exist. His name is William Maillis. He was born in Pennsylvania. He graduated high school in May of 2016 when he was only 9 years old, and he wants to be an astrophysicist someday. After high school, he attended classes at a community college. Soon he enrolled at Carnegie Mellon University. And last year, a video of him went viral. In it, he explains simply and logically his proof that God exists. Here are the young and brilliant William's words.
Let's start with the theory of relativity. You know Einstein, right? Well, in his theory, he said that the displacement of space-time is the cause of gravity. And if you're confused what space-time is, recently they found this new particle called the Higgs boson, and it makes up the Higgs field. So Einstein said that the displacement of space-time is the cause of gravity. If this is the case, then the absence of gravity, or the absence of space-time, must be pure gravity. Because of the law of flow, things will go to the point of least resistance. And if there's nothing there to resist, that's the point of least resistance. So, an absence of space-time would be pure gravity. Black holes are an absence of space-time, which is why nothing, not even light, can escape their pull. Also, if the universe is all of space-time and the entire Higgs field and all of space-time and matter, everything, then whatever's outside of the universe must be an absence of space-time. If that is the case, then the universe is not expanding into the absolute void around it, it's falling. Now, let's think back to the beginning of time. We know the universe has an age, right? 13.8 billion years. So, 13.8 billion years ago, the entire universe was reduced to a singularity, a particle smaller than a quark. However, if gravity is always working, i.e., if you jumped off this building, you're not going to fall 15 seconds later. You're going to fall immediately. So if gravity's always working, then and if the singularity was always there, like some atheists try to say, then the universe should have no age. It should be infinitely old. But it's not. It has an age. It's 13.8 billion years old. And something can't come from nothing because it would have to exist in order to cause itself to exist, which is illogical. So therefore, something other must have created the singularity. And that something other we observe as God.
Have other people challenged you on your theory? Or are you feel solid with what you're saying?
I feel fairly solid with what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, Hawking's theory that there should be no cause because of gravity, well, gravity can't create something. Gravity can't do anything if it's not acting against something. Gravity is literally nothing, as we stated before.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing applied on nothing is just nothing.
Nothing. Even I can follow that. Okay.
Yeah.
Clearly, you have been gifted with certain things and knowledge. And I guess the question, and it's probably too young yet for you to actually figure it out, but what are your dreams? What is something that you would like to accomplish in the future? I know your parents love you and they support you and they're extremely proud of you. But aside from that, what does William want?
I want to be an astrophysicist.
Astrophysicist.
Yes.
Okay.
So that I can prove to the scientific world that God does exist.
I think there's a follow-up question to that. You want to prove it. The question is why? Why do we need to prove it to anybody? Why do you need to prove it to the scientists? What do you think?
Well, because there's these atheists that try to say that there is no God, when in reality it takes more faith to believe that there's no God than it does to believe that there is a God.
Please say that again. That's an incredible statement.
Because it makes more sense that something created the universe than, say, the universe created itself. That takes more faith to say the universe created itself than to say something other created the universe, because that is more logical.
That was a great and simple explanation. So then he understands his faith well, it seems. Yet, like any aspiring astrophysicist, he has to keep an open mind. William says he's almost completely certain of his explanation being totally true and correct. He's left some room for finding even more proof that there's a creator, even though he probably knows true believers don't need any. Thanks for listening.
This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.